In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to a place at the table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table.
Welcome to a place at the table. Are you sitting comfortably? Not for long. Things are about to get fiery and probably furious. We take off with my advocacy for a better travel experience. Welcome, Ikechukwu.
Thank you, Yinka.
So what's your rating of the travel experience from our international airports?
I probably have a bit in common with you when it comes to that. My advocacy addresses another aspect of dysfunctionality, our health sector.
I share your concerns. Health and safety must go hand in hand. My concerns had to do with repealing the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. Welcome to the table, Aisha.
Thank you, Zumah. I must say these topics are already whetting my appetite. I am all for diagnosing the problem. And today I'm asking why we are so bad at holding people in authority accountable.
Once again, welcome, Aisha. If you ask me who I go ask, I certainly don't have that problem. I'm putting the blame where it lies and saying, Mr. Tinubu, free PDOM.
Feeling hurt. Anyway, we're just about hitting the wrong way. Just over a month ago, I embarked on a trip to the UK. It was an opportunity to try out Terminal 2 of the Murtala Mohammed Airport for the first time. I was eager to see if there was any improvement in the travel experience I was used to, traveling through Terminal 1. The summary of my experience, not very good. Yes, there was a new terminal with new facilities, walk-in chillers, and good ambience. But the travel experience was the same, atrocious. I counted 16 stops from the airport entrance to the final boarding. 6 stops from the entrance to departure, 6 stops from departure to pre-boarding, and 4 stops before boarding. At my 11th stop, yes, I was counting, just after the full body screening, I was accosted by NDLEA officials who again requested my passport and asked me for the 5th time where I was traveling to. At this point, unable to hold my frustration, I engaged the officers in a conversation about how the travel experience of an average Nigerian going through the airport is terrible. I told them, as someone who traveled widely, I've never had a worse travel experience than when going through Nigerian airports. Why do I have to be screened again by the NDLEA after going through a full body scan? Why do I have to go through a different check-in port for DSS and immigration? That function could be combined such that the immigration officer checks the passenger against a no-fly list. Why am I still asked how much currency I'm traveling with when there's a yellow form submitted to immigration with the same question asked? Why do I have to go through a different official checking visa and another one checking me in? Couldn't the same official do both? And why must travelers always have to be harassed with the question, what do you bring for me? To whom it may concern, fixing this problem is not difficult, but it will take all the agencies at the airport working in tandem, unless they are benefiting from the dysfunction.
I've had issues a lot of time to really sit people down and talk to them. So sometimes I say to them, I say, look, when you were looking for this job, you were praying to God. And when you got this job, you were very happy. But now you're so ungrateful about it. Because for me, what I look at service to be when you're working, you do it in such a way that you're grateful for the opportunity to be there, because there are so many people who are looking for this job. It's not even about you now. You and I, as Nigerians, we're sort of like used to it in a way, though it shouldn't be. But what about someone who is coming for the first time into the country, and what kind of impression it gives to that person, and what's that person going to go away? I mean, as Nigerians, you know us now. Yeah. We like life, we jive, we enjoy. And then you've entered Nigeria, you have that Nigeria experience, and then you are going out. Immigration will just take you back to factory resetting.
It's incredible, like you said. The micro changes that happen as opposed to what could have been the maximized ideal picture. I say that because over a period of time, like you, I'm well versed with travel, and I think the first time I came back to Nigeria was Christmas of 2004, and the experience, the airport experience, I mean, besides being fully drenched and knowing that I had to spend about maybe 2.5 hours in the airport just to process out, you know. And that first time coming back, there was no such thing as a visa on arrival, and I didn't have a visa, so I was locked up in the airport. You know, now, obviously that's like one in a million, but people actually go through this process, and things could have been a whole lot better. Yes, and as time has gone on, you gradually see the changes that are being made, but there are very little changes over a long period of time. And even I myself say to myself, I might not be an expert, you know, in this field, but I probably could do a better job delegating, making this much better. And if I could, the people who are well versed in this field should be doing a whole lot better than what I'm seeing.
Interesting. I think what bothers me most, beyond even the international airport, yesterday, when I was at the airport, I passed through the scanner, and then I still had to go through a body search. At the point, I had to tell the woman, okay, do you want me to take off my clothes? Because what precisely is going on here? Nigerians, we generally don't have a service culture, and it shows in the little things. Passing through the MM2, the new terminal a couple of months ago, it was so beautiful. It was nice. And I was expecting the quality of service, the quality of infrastructure to also translate to quality of service. And I was appalled. Now that you mentioned it, I was 16 stops, right? Yeah, it must have been up to that. I was just wondering, like, why do we have to go through all of this? Bottlenecks, too many checks sometimes leads to bottlenecks. The system needs to be reevaluated. The ones that are not serving, the management, they need to understand the why of each of the checkpoints. What purpose is this check serving? Can it be collapsed into somebody else's role? Why do we have to talk to 16 people before I get on a plane? Like you said, it's not done anywhere else. You know, these are the things that we subconsciously normalize. It didn't occur to me that I've never experienced this anywhere outside the country, outside in Nigeria, so you pointed it out. Again, we all need to do better. And I think it's a systematic issue, because those people are not just putting themselves there. Somebody put them there. And the part that really gets me irritated the most is the consistent request for tips. At every checkpoint, there's someone simply asking you for some, even ask outrightly. I now start wondering, like, so because you give me a yellow card, I need to tip you for what? That's even worse than Americans. At least they serve you before they expect tips. But you're literally not serving me in any tangible way. You're more like
expecting me to give you something.
Yeah, you still expect me. That is exploitative.
I think you're very generous calling it tips. It's begging. It's begging, and we have a begging culture to match our non-service culture. But I mean, two things struck me for me listening to you is, I mean, this is an old issue. We've talked about how dysfunctional airports are until we're blue in the face, but nothing ever changes. And so for me, it's a good example of how you can change the APC motto in 2015. You can change things, make them look prettier, but the system and the processes don't change. And I think that's a good lesson for us to keep thinking about as we play musical chairs with politicians. The faces can keep changing, but the system and the structures remain the same. And really, honestly, we're avoiding that hard work of changing systems and structures. So you can build the most beautiful airport, but you continue having 16 stops. So for me, those are the two interesting things.
20,
or more, yeah.
It's either we have zero tolerance for dysfunctionality, or we continue to nurture it. It's one or the other.
Yinka, you said unless some are benefiting from the dysfunction, Abi. If only I could sit down with those people. Man, no man, and every man for himself. There are some things about living in Nigeria that make you dependent due to a dysfunctional society and lacking in independence due to the absence of a welfare system. I once spoke of how I worked various jobs when I was living in Yankee, also known as the United States of America. And from working as a waiter to janitor to bartending to cleaning toilets, etc., 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 I was able to do all these jobs as a student in need for some extra cash and also for independence. Whereas, what would be the equivalent of such a situation in Nigeria? I beg to ask. How would a young person with no connections make a few extra naira? Even in the music industry, there isn't a framework for artist development. There is no provision or welfare structure to support those who are without cash or connections and facing the crisis. How much more when the emergency you are faced with is a health emergency? How much more? Are we to speak of the critically ill patient who resorts to cheaper options prescribed by quacks, or is it the hospitals that refuse to treat patients until the bill is paid? I mean, I have had to go through that personally, and I can tell you that there are a whole lot more many cases of malpractice due to negligence. It can be like hell on earth. We sometimes feel immune to the hell until we find ourselves in it. I recently spoke of my experience of herniated disc, which causes acute sciatica. I would like to call it acute. And that rendered me paralyzed on my right side for 5 days at once, and another time more recently for 7 days. This is part of the reason why I had to leave Nigeria to seek medical care. What of the majority who don't have that option, but live and die in a system that has no safety net for those who have neither cash nor connections? I say it's time we spend more of our energies building a welfare state beyond NGOs and unfruitful government interventions. Let those who have begin to think of how to support those who don't in long-term and sustainable ways before we find ourselves at the mercy of the merciless nation called Nigeria. We owe it to ourselves to be our brother's keeper, and our brother may turn predator when the backs are against the wall. Think about that.
One of the things also, I think for us also, like I mentioned earlier, we tend to have a bit of selfishness. So you see a lot of people who, even when they're sick, they come out, they're able to get monies raised for them, they get their health back, but they never say anything about advocating for better healthcare system, especially for those who are in the villages. And I've said it constantly that we cannot crowdfund our way to good healthcare system. We must have a system that works for us. I mean, the healthcare system, the government must do, the needful that they are supposed to do. And then some people feel that, as long as there are any certain money, I keep telling people, most Nigerians, myself included, we are one sickness away from poverty. There's nothing that drains as much as sickness, because you can think you're earning ₦1 million a month or 2 million a month, and you're this big boy or big girl until you have a healthcare crisis that needs a lot of money, and everything, it's going away. So these are some of the things that we have. But you did say something. Man, no man, and every man for himself. And unfortunately, that's where we are as a nation. And that's one thing that we ought to begin to look at, to say when something happens to another one, we are all potential victims waiting to happen. I'll quickly end up by saying one thing that I always say to everyone, that yesterday's victims were once survivors. Today's victims were yesterday's survivors. And tomorrow's victims would be today's survivors. The question is, who is next?
Welfare system is not the responsibility of the citizen, it is the responsibility of the government. And in spite of that, the citizens, we have like an informal welfare system. If anything is wrong with you, what do you call your friends, your family? And most of the time they show up. But even in spite of that, I think Nigeria is getting to the point where there has to be institutionalized welfare system to take care of the less privileged. It is essential for our survival and sustainability as a nation. The second part is how will a young person without connections make it? It will also, even the people who have connections, they still have to also. Everybody, you just need to also, whatever it is you do. The other part is medical negligence. This is something that really, really scares me. All the times I've been to the hospital in the past 1 year, the doctors, they are overworked. And on a certain level, you can see that they are unable to really empathize with you. And care work is empathy work. So if you are overworked and you're looking at, I have like 30 more people I need to see today, it's difficult for you to be in the moment to really appraise the situation. You know, it's disturbing. It's better in private hospitals, but it's still an issue, particularly private hospitals with specialist care.
It was as if Aisha was stealing
Your thoughts?
my, she was peeping into my paper here, because I wrote exactly the same thing you said, that you are one major illness away from poverty.
From poverty,
And that's true, you know, for Nigerians. And you know, the prayer of an average Nigerian is that may you never have to face a major health crisis, because the safety net for Nigerians in terms of our health issues is crowdfunding, but that's not sustainable. And you are, like you said, a few people might be able to benefit from that because you have influential friends, okay, who can share your posts on social media and through their influence get help. But the majority of people can't access that kind of help, and we need to look at models all over the world that work. And one model, you know, that I've seen work in the U.S. is the Affordable Care Act, all right, properly called Obamacare, which, you know, was also a response by the Obama administration to the issue of high cost of healthcare in the U.S. There's no reason why we can't do the same in Nigeria, you know, in terms of creating this health insurance system where both government and the private sector.
So we have NHIS.
I just wrote that down. I was like,
yeah, but yes, NHIS is there, yes, and truly, yes, it's the basis to which you can start. But the reality is that how many people
for civil servants,
how many people have actually have access to NHIS, and I think that we should be very deliberate and intentional to expand access to healthcare and make sure that every Nigerian, whether you're in the city, whether you're in the suburb, or whether you're in the village, whether it's a pregnant woman, whether you have cancer, whatever you can have access to top quality healthcare.
Again, it's just down to accountability, because how many health agencies do we have, public health agencies do we have in Nigeria, aside from National Health Insurance Service? Where does their budget go? How is it used? That's just another question of accountability. But I also, listening to you, I thought to myself, Nigerians give, which everybody has pointed out, and I often say to myself, what I say about Nigerians giving about health, education, and everything, we are the welfare state. And that's why it's really hard to say that Nigerians should spend on the things like the arts, because we're all private foundations. We're all the welfare system of our friends and our family. And so we're giving money for education and health constantly, and we have no more money to do any other type of philanthropy. So the average Nigerian is, so again, yes, the call is not for Nigerians. The call is to government. Who is the Minister of Health today? Who is the Minister of State for Health today? This, you know, how many petitions have they received since they got into office? You know, how many has budget looked at their budgets to see how it's going, where it's going? We know from all the breakdowns that we see about our budget that we're overextended, and we spend most of our small budget, paltry health and education budget, for example, on recurrent, which is paying the salaries of the staff, as opposed to capital investments that are needed. So we know what the problem is. So it comes down to my own pet peeve: accountability. What's going on? Like, it's one thing to diagnose. How do we deal with it?
And just before we leave this subject, I wanted to touch on something that Zumah spoke about, which is medical malpractice. Unfortunately, you know, it's something that has touched directly in my family right here in Nigeria. And it was such a contradicting situation, which was the old man was in a hospital over there, was taken care of, was told to take 3 to 6 weeks to recover there, and the stubborn old man decided to jump on a plane 3 days later and come back to Nigeria and said, hey, if anything happens, my Nigerian healthcare, and that's why he passed. You understand? Because a wrong procedure was performed, which also goes to the other point, which I kind of felt I begged to differ when I heard it, which was like a lot of these doctors are overworked. I'm yet to see that in Nigeria, overworked doctors. In fact, my last scenario in a hospital in Nigeria, I won't name the hospital on the island, the doctor was getting advice of what to do from the nurse.
Yeah, we have that. Yeah.
That happens a lot in Nigeria, because guess what? the nurses have more on-ground experience than the doctors. And who's training the doctors? Are they practical doctors training doctors? Or is it theoretical?
Using outdated books and journals and labs. Yeah.
You just sent me to 2001.
Sorry.
Me giving birth to my youngest child, my last child. And I was in labor for hours, tired. The doctor didn't come. And I kept telling them, I was on, what do you call it? Is it oxytocin? The thing that they used to induce labor. 5 bags. I wasn't supposed to. I kept telling them, look.
5 bags?
5 bags. From 8 a.m. to around, is it 11 or 12 p.m.? I was on that thing. And I kept saying to them, look, I'm in so much, because I have a high tolerance for pain. Even if I'm going through labor, you don't see it in my body. I'm like, I'm in so much pain. And if it, and they were like, oh, it's good. The more pain you have, I'm like, no, if it continues this way, my system is going to start shutting down. Please call the doctor. I was all alone there. At the end of the day, those nurses, it was a cleaner. Because I got to a place I couldn't push, I couldn't do nothing. She was the one that came and helped bring my baby out. And she came, she was as blue. I thought I had lost her because I was like, oh, after all this thing. And then there was no oxygen. There was no oxygen in the air. My daughter couldn't breathe. They were hitting her. And I was looking at her, I'm like, okay, she has 4 minutes. If oxygen doesn't get to her brain, she's going to be brain dead. And I'm looking at that, I'm thinking. And then the guy with the oxygen something was nowhere to be found. Private hospital. They were running all around, and I was looking, and then after a while, she just started breathing. 2001, December 6th. The girl is still here. Well, she wanted to be here anyways. I just don't know. Crazy.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I guess it is really a survival of the fittest, you know, and if it is survival of the fittest, isn't it inviting a state of jungle justice? We don't want to find ourselves in that space. I mean, or has that horse bolted already?
Jungle justice? Not on my watch. Understanding consent, repealing the Violence Against People Prohibition Act. Did you know that 1 in 3 women in Nigeria aged 15 to 49 has experienced physical violence? Did you know that 1 in 4 girls below 15 has experienced sexual violence? Did you know that 2 out of 3 women experience violence from their husbands or boyfriends? Did you know that 1 out of 100 sexual assaults is brought to trial and very few are convicted? Despite the overwhelming evidence of the pervasive nature of violence against women and girls in Nigeria, Senator Jubrin Issa of Kogi East Senatorial District is seeking to dismantle the laws designed to protect us. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act is a crucial piece of legislation that provides maximum protection and effective remedies for victims of violence, irrespective of gender. It prohibits all forms of violence against persons in private and public life, ensuring the perpetrators are held accountable for their actions. The Act is a lifeline for countless women and girls who have suffered unimaginable trauma. It gives them the legal tools needed to seek justice and rebuild their lives. Senator Jubrin's push to repeal the VAPA is a dangerous and misguided attempt to undermine the rights and safety of women and girls. It claims that physical violence alone is insufficient to prove violence, and that intent must also be considered is a dangerous fallacy. Its emphasis on distinguishing between absence of consent and consent obtained by fraud, undue influence, or other unlawful means is disturbing. Consent is a fundamental human right, and it is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship. When a person is forced, coerced, or manipulated into sexual activity, it is rape, regardless of whether there is physical violence involved. The Act clearly defines consent as a willful and conscious agreement. Consent obtained by fraud, undue influence, or other unlawful means is invalid. It is a violation of a person's autonomy and agency. We must unite against this attempt to repeal the VAPA. This is not just a legal issue. It is a moral imperative. Women and girls deserve to live in a society free from violence and fear. No means no. My body, my agency.
Thank you so much. That's one that we've all been talking about in civil society, honestly, for the last couple of days or weeks when this news came out. And I don't know if how many people know that when the VAP Act was first passed in 2015, it was only applicable to FCT. It has taken us 9 years to reach that two-third majority. So that's 24 other states passing and domesticating their own versions of VAP to get it as a law that covers Nigeria. And right now, only Kano, shamefully, is the only state that hasn't passed VAP. So it's ironic that after struggling for 9 years to get this, adopted as a federal law, working on implementation and adoption, that we will now get somebody just waking up and saying, let's repeal it. I mean, it's actually unconscionable. Civil society is on it, but I think we need the voices of all Nigerians to join in. I mean, you've made a clear case why this act to repeal it is nonsense, but we need more than just civil society. Again, this is not something that a group of people who are funded by donors. I think private sector, coming to you, Yinka, I have to say I read a report and it's almost like private sector doesn't recognize the you saw the data. It's like private sector in Nigeria doesn't recognize at all what women go through. And a lot of the discrimination and violence happens in the workplace. Yeah. But corporate Nigeria has been shamefully quiet, not putting enough money into addressing it at all. So maybe this is a chance for them to step up. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree absolutely. I think that just like Zumah said, this is something for everybody. Everybody, all hands must be on deck to make sure that we make our society safe for our women, our girls, and everybody. We must also recognize the hard work that went into getting the VAP passed in 2015. There was a lot of civil society groups.
It took years again for that to happen.
That worked together. It was a lot of work, and it was actually one of the best written pieces of legislation in Nigeria at that time, and even up to now, and we see the progress that has been made, because from there we see what's happening in Lagos State, for instance, and a lot of other states, Ekiti and some other states, are really taking it, beyond the VAP Act itself, and so we must, join hands together to see what can be done. Now, I recognize that this is not the first time the senator is going at this. He tried it in 2022 as well.
Interesting. The same person.
The same person.
Maybe we need to occupy his
same person. So it's not like this is his first time. He tried it.
What is he afraid of?
I don't know. I mean,
That's a good question.
What he's doing is it's somebody who I say is smart by half.
Okay.
So it comes in with this idea that, the compensation is not enough, or for the punishment is too small. Instead of imposing fines, let's take out fines. Let's increase the prison terms. Or the act is referencing some laws that have been repealed, for instance, I think Kama 1990. So it's coming in with some legitimate concerns, all right? And then bringing in is warped idea of introducing intent into consent. So how do you describe, how do you explain intent? Somebody has been raped, and then we have to now.
How do you prove?
How do we prove intent?
And I must confess here, I'm just hearing this for the first time. I'm telling you honestly, I didn't know about this, and I'm sure there are also a lot of people who don't know about this. And oh my goodness, I'm in short, I'm actually speechless. First of all, is the fact that when you're talking about whether it's rape or any violence, it's not always seen as a crime in Nigeria. It seems like some misdemeanor or something like that. And people don't take it seriously. And I think that's what they're also trying to get us. Like you did say, he's trying to be clever by half. But at the end of the day, at the bottom of it all is to look at, there's something I always say, the legislative arm of government is the bedrock of democracy. As long as we have charlatans in those places who don't care about the people, they will continue to make laws that don't favor the people. And if we really want to fix this Nigeria, we have to fix politics. Everyone must be a politician. This is not the time to keep saying politics is dirty. We've been conditioned to believe politics is dirty, and it was deliberately done. And at the end of the day, people stay away. If you're not at the seat of table where decisions are being made about your life, your body, your everything, they will make all sorts of decisions. As a woman, or every woman in the world, we have post-traumatic stress disorder, because you're always there's always at that place where your body is ready for like fight. You're thinking there's something that is coming. It's every day, it's every moment, it's you being afraid, you yourself, you're afraid, and you have daughters, and up till now, the world is not safe enough for them to be able to live freely and just be themselves. And then we have a Senator Jibril, who his mates are passing bills that are positively, improving the lives of the people, and all he's thinking about is to take us back to where they can beat, or probably where they can rape a woman, and then they will say, oh, marry her because you raped her. I just don't even know why that is the main issue compared to all the things that we have here. I'm actually speaking. I don't want to, I short at the verse, I don't want to even go far. Let me just leave it, hand over to you.
I'm not going to go far at all. I'm not going to waste my time with this subject for the simple fact that I've come to a point in my life where when something is common sense,
that's it.
I just rather not waste my energy. For someone, I mean, it was obviously put into place because it was a necessity. And even though it was a necessity and initially it was only the FCT, like you said, furthermore, subsequently it became broad. Now, someone is now taking his time, multiple times, like you said, to try and repeal, not amend, but repeal. If you want to, so that's why when you were saying, oh, that he has some, some points to stand on, I'm like, no, you don't. Not if you're going for repealing. Why, if you want to make amends, make amendments, not repeal because you want to amend. Doesn't make any sense. But that's a typical behavioral characteristic of Nigerian government. They're always backwards, always taking steps backward. They talk the good game, but once put in the position of power, it's a backward situation. Consistently. I mean, I'm sorry that I have to say it like that, but I call it a spade, and that's what we always experience.
Not a garden implement. It's a spade.
We must learn to speak out for ourselves before we can speak out for others. Right, Hai?
Indeed, Zumah. Even if it means standing shoulder to shoulder with others in this advocacy, or in the push to hold people in positions of authority accountable. I'm talking about business unusual today because why are we bad at holding people in positions of authority accountable? Across every sector, we're in abusive relationships where we have lost all sense of what is appropriate or even standard acceptable behavior. Here are 3 theories why. I think first for me is that our governance structures are designed for weak accountability. And after decades of divide and rule and a cooptative corruption culture that compromises everyone, being unaccountable has now become our culture. The truth is all of us no longer want to be held accountable. And that way we don't need to hold anyone accountable. It's almost like, behave the way you want people to behave to you. 2, the incentives for bad behavior overwhelmingly tip the scales against accountability. We are gaslighted into believing that being abusive, proper, fraudulent is the smart way to be. We applaud, calling it understanding the game, knowing how to win. And then 3rd, for those of us who are still struggling to hold power accountable, we're always negotiating from a position of weakness, battling extreme polarization and now poverty. This is why it is increasingly difficult to end bad governance, end SARS, occupy Nigeria. All of this has been happening for over a decade. And the myriad other things that should be better that we've all spoken about today. So how do we break this chain of destruction? I have 2 theories. The first is very simple. We have to be accountable to each other before those in power will be accountable to us. This means that we need to agree minimum standards for public and private behavior, and that we stop behaving towards each other the way those in power behave towards us. So in other words, we need to love ourselves before government will love us. And then 2, we need to invest in organizing social movements. For me, I think this is the future of the reforms and the accountability that we need, because all our institutions, again, we've talked about it today, health, the airport, the VAP Act, all our institutions and arms of government have been captured and are compromised. So to be effective, our social movements must be ideologically based and value-driven, which means investing in the time it takes to educate and raise awareness door to door if need be. The days of rage that we have and are going to continue having have their value, but we need more than ousting presidents to build a better society, which you just talked about. You can have a new airport, but the people inside the airports are the same. We need system reforms. And it's only the demands of the people that are going to push those demands. So once we start modeling accountability towards each other, it will be a step towards building the collective power required to hold government accountable. That will be the beginning of the journey towards reforming Nigeria. It'd be lovely to hear what you guys think. And I don't know, I would like to start with you, Ikechukwu.
Nigeria, we hail thee. Honestly, I think holding our governmental officials in general has been something that we've spoken about for far too long without any kind of actions behind it in general, in mass. It doesn't happen. So it's actually not just, you have to understand that our government, our leaders are us. They come from us. We are them, just they're in the position. So the root of the issue is actually within us. So we have to change as a people. And our people, unfortunately, have been so impoverished for so long and so normalized in that poverty that, you know, receiving bribery is not a crime. Collecting small is not an issue. It's normal. Do you understand? They say it's normal. And if you don't say it's normal, what's doing you? Do you understand? So we need a new inflow of the individuals or the type of individuals who are going into politics. Because in Nigeria, for a very, very long time, the individuals who are in politics are bred in politics.
That's right.
And then there's a hierarchy which kind of assembles I would like to say a facade of what we would consider an aristocracy within
The system.
Exactly. And nepotism just... So even when you're switching generations and thinking that, oh, the new generation is going to change, within that new generation, there are already roots from the old one, feeding them, leading them, bringing them up. And that's what consists of the vicious cycle that we remain in. Next thing you know, it's going left.
It's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Curious, Aisha, queen of protests.
Yes, because people don't realize the relationship between governance and their lives. And so they just feel that, and after all, they say, Yinka, if I'm hungry, I can come to him and beg for money. He will give me if I am unable to pay my children's school fees. So the middle class, or should I say people, are government. They are that stopgap for so we're almost like subsidizing government's failure in people's lives. So they don't understand what this politics is all about. That's why you give somebody #1 and they accept the money and they vote, the way they want to vote. But then also, there's a place where we need to understand that advocacy, activism, and politics are the same. The same end goal is supposed to be for the greater good. It's usually the way that the process that is different. Where those in advocacy activism are pointing out what the problems are, that in the demand side of governance, those who are in politics elected into office are supposed to supply. And so they're supposed to solve the problems that are being pointed out. But here we've come to a place in Nigeria where we've been conditioned that advocates are supposed to be on the streets being beaten by rain, while politicians are supposed to be looting the Commonwealth. So it's even normal, it's normalized that, people will loot. So we need to also, when we're thinking about that mind reset, there has to be a paradigm shift. These are certain things that we see. Because I see people go, but you are living activism. Oh, I thought you are an activist. I'm not an activist. I'm an active citizen. I don't want to be silent. There's a difference. I'm not protesting for anybody. I'm tired of being nameless, voiceless, and faceless. And so I'm speaking out. And how do we break that chain of destruction? We must get to a place where people right from birth are allowed to understand that they can make demands and there must be consequences for bad behavior. And we should take it on in the society. If we come back to having values, a lot of these things will be done. I mean, people should be shamed for not giving good governance.
I think our leaders need therapy.
But coming back to where you started, you said we are in an abusive relationship. And I tell you this, it started from the home. The first set of dictators that Nigerians met are their parents. You can't talk, you can't say anything. People like us, I know the number of beatings I got. Branches were broke. Because me, I will stand. I have high tolerance for pain. You will beat me, I will not give you I will not even, I'll just look at you when you're done, I'm like, oh, are you done?
And so I wrote down that accountability is the bedrock of governance. And if we want a better Nigeria, as he said, we have to start by being accountable first to ourselves, accountable to the society, accountable to, to our highest ideals, and not just measure ourselves based on low standards. And that's why for me, and I like the way you started it, when you started with parents, I had PTSD, honestly. I was telling my brother, my sister-in-law, some weeks ago about a trauma that I felt. And I still feel that trauma when I remember what happened. This happened in the late 70s. I couldn't have been more than eight years old or 7 or 8. Your parents will come to your parents' friend will come to the house and they give you money, and it was just them pennies. So I'd saved up to 25 kobo. Okay, I know a lot of Gen Zs will be wondering what is 25 kobo. Yes, it was a lot of money in the late 70s.
Like 25K right now.
25 kobo. And I went to buy a loaf of bread, with 25 kobo. My mom came back, found out that I had gone to buy bread, and then she was upset that the food she gave to me was not enough. I had to go and buy bread. And she, stripped me and beat the living daylights out of me. Now, I still remember, and I'm in my 50s. I still remember, because, and I kept asking why. I saved the money.
Exactly, my money, yeah.
I didn't steal it. I saved it. And so, our parents must understand that accountability starts from them. Okay? Our pastors must understand as well that they are also accountable to their members. In schools as well, we must demand accountability from the PTA, from the school authorities. We must start. When we start this thing, I think we will grow a sense of what you call a critical mass. And then when everybody is asking for accountability, somehow it gets into governance. And that's why I said accountability is a bedrock of governance. We cannot ask...
Bedrock of good governance.
Good governance. Thank you very much. And that's where I think we should start.
I have to particularly thank you for this advocacy because our value system is something that is very, very close to my heart. I feel like the bar is literally on the floor, on the ground.
There's no bar.
There is no bar at all. Like Aisha said, it is systematic. I just want to make a point to what Yinka said. I'm glad we're parenting better now. I think there is hope for the next generation. Yes. But for our generation, we all have one form of trauma in which asking why is considered an affront and it is considered disobedience. I'm not even saying I'm not doing this. I'm just saying, why do I have to do it? I'm glad that more intentional parenting, more accountability towards the child. I hope it continues the way it is. What you allow continues and what you reward amplifies. As far as we keep rewarding bad behavior, which is what the current system rewards, there wouldn't be, the bar is going to be on the floor. And when there are no real consequences attached to bad behavior, and we need to bring shame back, there is no shame anymore in the society. It is not the same thing anymore. We need to bring values back to the home. We need to bring values back to our schools. And we need to bring values back to society. Thank you, Ai.
Who are you accountable to and what are you accountable for? So, bring it on, Aisha.
Okay, bring it on, Ai. I've long been ready for a shake-up. Girl, down. Mr. Tinubu, free PDOM. At PDOM Nigeria, a whistleblower, an investigative journalist on X, who has uncovered and leaked several public interest information, has been arrested and dehumanized worse than a terrorist. When did investigative journalism become a crime? When did revealing the wrongdoing of a government become a crime? Isn't it the wrongdoing that is supposed to be a crime? With the arrest of PDOM Nigeria, as well as several other arrests and harassment of investigative journalists, it is safe to say that Mr. Tinubu is very much aware of all the wrongdoings in his illegitimate government and invested in doing more atrocious acts and wants to ensure that none of these activities will be brought to light. Mr. Tinubu, what are you hiding? Why are you angry that wrongdoings are being exposed by journalists? Why are you not focused on correcting the wrongdoings and giving the people good governance? Who rigs election and give good governance? Who will go to such lengths and then do that which is right and diligently serve the people? With the current arrest and prosecution of investigative journalists and whistleblowers, it is not you. This is not the Nigeria of the 90s when you had to go on exile, and it seems you want to replicate that Nigeria today. This is 2024, and media has been democratized and cannot be rigged. You cannot arrest and make to disappear all the investigative journalists nor citizens who share the wrongdoings of your illegitimate government. The laws of the land, which you have shown absolute disdain for by your actions, guarantees the freedom of thought, speech, and assembly, as well as giving rights to access information about the activities of government and its decision-making. It is through whistleblowers and journalists like PDOM Nigeria that citizens know what is going on. And to oppress these journalists is to oppress we, the citizens. And as long as PDOM Nigeria and any other journalist is in captivity, we all are in captivity. Mr. Tinubu, free PDOM. I end with a message to NBC, which has become the mouthpiece of government, and to the security agents who are more focused on regime control rather than protection of lives and properties of citizens in this country, that this is I, Aisha, speaking. Aisha Yesufu, let me repeat, speaking in her personal capacity.
Is PDOM a journalist?
What is journalism?
I don't know. I
Exactly.
think we need to...
We need to define what
we need
a
to
journalist
define
is. Well,
that.
You know, in Nigeria, well, I mean, I don't know who he or she is, but I know that I've been called a journalist many times, and I always have to correct people. I'm like, the fact that I write pieces in the newspaper doesn't make me a journalist. But yeah, I guess in this case, it serves its purpose to call him a journalist. He is working for the Fourth Estate, loosely. So journalist, media person, blogger, content creator, there's many names, but is this person part of the Fourth Estate that deserves to be protected? Absolutely. The Fourth Estate is really all that's standing between us and the kind of dysfunction that we have across the three arms of government, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, which pretty much don't exist to balance each other out the way they're supposed to. So yeah, this is the Fourth Estate.
It starts from looking at who really is a whistleblower. I think that's also a very, very relevant conversation. I know that we use that word loosely, but a whistleblower really, I think, is established on the basis of 3 points. So a whistleblower versus who is a leaker.
Okay.
You know? So, you know, I've looked at the two descriptions, and I've seen that there are two different
Connotations.
Connotations for each of them. A whistleblower, is especially identified first by intent. Okay, that is, what they're trying to do is they are providing information that is for the public good, either in the public or private sector or whatever. The information they provide are very important, credible, basis. And 3, they have legal backing. That is, a whistleblower is protected by law. a leaker is not protected by law. Anybody who wants to be, an investigative journalist, and he wants to release sensitive information, must understand the risk that they take. And if the risk that is that if you are not protected by law, you will be prosecuted by law. And if you are prosecuted by law, it means that you have accepted the fact that that's what you want you are ready to accept that risk.
You're comfortable with the outcome.
You're comfortable with it. And then whatever is the outcome, you will do. That's the way I see it.
Okay.
And so for those who don't know, there's an official secret act in Nigeria which criminalizes release of official information. As much as possible, if that's what they have him on, my point is that we should insist then that he be taken to court and his human rights respected through that process.
Okay, I'm not sure I have the range about this conversation. I don't know Peter. I just heard about him about 48 hours ago, and based on what I'm saying, there is really nothing conclusive, like, oh, okay, it's a whistleblower. The other part is saying, no, he leaked classified information. At the end of the day, the most important thing is, if he's in custody, he should be arraigned. Take him to court. Charge him properly. Follow the due process, irrespective of what the crime, if it's a whistleblower, if it's a leaker, if it's a journalist, follow due process. If you're arresting someone, there has to be a why, and then, and I also saw something about the bail condition being set at 500 million.
Yeah.
Ridiculous conditions, actually.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like,
That's interesting,
So you
considering
can-
that people like Yaya Bello are roaming around free. I mean, to be honest, the context within which this conversation is happening cannot just be ignored. The truth is, we know how the Nigerian state operates. We know how the judiciary operates. We know how all arms of government operate. And so, somehow this person is being treated with such harshness, while people who are literally robbing us of health and education are roaming free. People who are not responsible for the terrorists and bandits who are raping and killing and maiming hundreds of thousands in Nigeria are all free. But somehow it's this person, journalist, leaker, whatever, who is the real threat
it's
that we
usually
can
the
now
most-
mobilize everything in government against.
I was going to ask some questions just like she was, because Pidom, like, is he a journalist? It's the honest truth, because like you said, there are parameters put in place for protecting this type of people. And Nigeria hasn't really been the great example for freedom of speech. We haven't.
freedom after speech.
Maybe, and it's unfortunate, but I've always been, people in the industry, in the music industry, entertainment industry, revere me as that person that always keeps it real, speaks his mind, calls it like it is. It's not gardening, like she said, but a spade is a spade, And as far as I'm concerned, I do believe that people should have freedom of speech, but context is key. Because like you said, just because he's coming out with things that he, quote unquote, are supposed to be suggested as allegedly facts, are they vetted? Are they confirmed? What are your sources? And yes, a whistleblower protects his sources, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, if you can't be validated, if you are crossing the boundaries of, freedom of speech and criminality, you have yourself to blame for that. And I don't think, in the day and age that we are right now with the utilities put in place, I don't think that they would pick him up if they didn't think that they had something to stand on and be able to explain. And even though we do have that society where they're still picking people up anyhow, right? You have to acknowledge the fact that there's some kind of evolution happening in there. There's a change happening. It might be a little trickle, but or a little too gradual, but it's happening. And people are beginning to be very, very paranoid and cautious as to what they do in the public space. Because, it will be recorded, it will be posted, it will be seen, someone will hear one way, they don't know, is this phone recording? Do you understand what I'm saying? So a lot of people are being very, very careful about what they do. So that said, freedom of speech is key as far as I'm concerned. I'm not really too versed in the Pidom case, and frankly speaking, there are a lot of charlatans online, a lot. And to start weeding through them to find the real ones is not my cup of tea on this time.
Well, like you said, it's not your cup of tea. Just to add to the fact that even some of where they put the bill, even some of the charges are out there. They are not saying that what he said aren't true, aren't factual. They're not, it's not defamation.
Why are you saying it?
But why did you say it? Why did you bring out all the
Keep our secret for us.
So that is key. So let's keep it real on those issues. And by the way, yes, people are afraid of what are the things that will be done, but the Nigerian government, it's never the federal government, the state government, local government, whatever, they don't. Because as far as they're concerned, Nigerians are not, they are not citizens in Nigeria. They are only slaves in Nigeria, and they don't care. Anyway, we are bold to speak out and refuse to be silenced because justice demands it. What about you? Be sure to join us again at the table for those big conversations that nobody wants to have. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us. Thank you.
I do what Bright usually does.
Oh, yes, I did it.
Oh, yeah. Can I do that? I hope I did. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's a wrap.